Welcome to BMI Redefined with Jen and Mo. Let's do this.
Oh yeah, let's do this.
Welcome back, everybody, to BMI Redefined with
Jen
and Mo.
Ah!
Yay! So it's been a week.
Yeah, it has.
Here we go. This is our last section, right, of the age of anxiety. Mm-hmm. And we've had, is this section 5? Yes, because the first one, and then we had, right.
That's right, because we did an intro. Yeah.
Right. And this one is called You Are Not Alone.
Oh.
I know, right?
Right. You're here. I'm not alone.
That's right. See? You're not alone. Anyway, I don't think that's what they mean, but that's okay.
I don't think so.
No. But what this is that other people are, this last section is that people are sharing their stories of their own anxiety and how they work to overcome it.
Right. Different ways to deal with it.
Right? Mm-hmm. So we're just going to gently guide you through the last part of this book and this magazine, book.
Journal.
It's more of a journal, isn't it?
Yeah, with the researchers and the different universities involved.
For $14.99, it's a journal.
Yes, it is. Yes, that's a good point.
Right? Yeah. Because a magazine would be like, $7.
Yeah.
$6.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yep, you're welcome. Make sure everyone is on the same sheet of music here.
So, Mo, it's interesting in this particular section of the journal, just looking at the articles that we're researching and reviewing, that there's a number of authors that are involved in telling their stories, like they've written books about psychology or dealing with anxiety. Mm-hmm. And some of the articles in this section are actually written by them. Mm-hmm. So, and sharing some of their own stories, like you were just saying. So right. It's pretty insightful that they're sharing real world experiences that they've had with their families or with friends or with work. And even we'll be talking about a Wall Street Journal reporter who shared some of her stories as well.
Right. And the first part of this is it's called A Family of Worrywarts, Coping in an Age of Anxiety. So this is very true. There's one side of my family that are all worrywarts. I grew up with worrywarts.
Really?
And then the other side is like, well, are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Okay, then get up. Let's get going. Okie dokie.
So just kind of a go with the flow side. And then a worrying side.
Right.
Wow.
Trying to, control the situation or the outcome, and not by fault of I don't know. I wouldn't say control freak, but just because they're anxious.
Mm-hmm. They just want to know what the future holds.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the other side is just like the future holds whatever it holds.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And they both, turn out the same. So it's,
we all get to the same finish line. Mm-hmm.
Who Bobby McFerrin, don't worry, be happy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Don't worry, be happy.
So I have a little funny story about that. When that song had come out, and this is kind of sharing nostalgia, if you will, in my age group. Mm-hmm. Was in college, and my college roommate had stayed up all night studying, and when she stayed up all night studying, I'm sure Janet will hear this at some point, she cooked SpaghettiOs. So I woke up to the house, the apartment, smelling like SpaghettiOs. I knew she'd been up all night studying. Mm-hmm. I know she needed a certain grade in this particular class. And I was headed out the next morning. She was on the sofa studying, of course. And I was headed out, and I walked by and said, Janet, don't worry. She said, if you tell me to be happy, I will kill you. And do you know, that's the closest to ever having an argument that we've ever had. We have a great friendship.
That's awesome.
But so I just said, okay, bye. And she ended up doing fine on the exam. Everything turned out beautiful.
She was happy.
She was happy.
And you weren't killed, so that's great.
Yes, I'm still living
That's
to tell
awesome.
about it. But
No,
but that's a very and then there's a recent song, the Happy song that came out a few years ago. That was actually my
Drives me
trainer's
nuts.
ringtone for a while.
Drives me nuts. The Minions or whatever. Yeah.
So but it's
Yeah.
interesting how within the songs how they resonate with us.
It's
And
true,
kind of
right?
This don't worry, be happy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
Sometimes it's easier said than done, though.
That is true, right? That is very true. And so back to the article, it says more than 6 million American teens have had an anxiety disorder, according to Natural Institute of Mental Health data. Tomato. How do you say data? Do you say data or data?
I say data, but I think it's because of the Star Trek show.
Okay, I say data, but that's okay.
Really, when we get along,
And we get along fine.
Yeah.
So more than 6 million American teens. And I see that. And, so many kids are on medication right now because of anxiety. And anxiety, of course, can lead to depression. So then they're on medication for that. And when I was teaching, I saw a lot of that. I saw a lot of the anxiousness and, are we being tested on that? Is that going to be tested on? It's like, okay, everybody chill out.
Was always
always a question, right?
Is this going to be on the test?
Right.
Was always a question. And one thing that I started doing over time, I learned so I wouldn't get that question so often, is I told them in the beginning, I said, if there's a topic or a concept that I mention at least 3 times, take note, it will probably be on the test.
Right, exactly.
Because every single day that would be, is this going to be on? Well, I'm not going to tell you exactly what's going to be in there, but if there's something I keep going over, just, mentally, you should realize that you'll probably see that again.
It's on the test. Yeah, exactly. And, these kids are just full of angst. And I think a lot of it, too, has to do with internet, computers, all that stuff.
Like we talked about in the last podcast.
Like we did.
Social media. It can be helpful, but it can also be a hindrance also.
Right.
To mental health.
Right. And so anyway, so in this one, she's talking about, she had older boys and then she had a younger boy later on in life, and how these older boys would sit around the table and talk about things, and and she's like, close your ears, to the, trying to be protective, and they were protective, of course, of their little brother as well. But, when you're the youngest, you hear a lot and learn a lot.
You absorb whatever's being said.
That was you, right?
Yeah. I'm much younger than my brother and sister.
Right.
So, yeah.
And so I'm younger, too. There's a 6 or 7 year difference. And so, you learn quickly.
Yeah. You hear a lot of stories. That very eye-opening. And there's something kind of interesting here and toward the beginning of this particular article where she talked about, and we touched on this a little bit in past podcasts, but the controlling parents or controlling situations, how children who experience more controlling versus non-controlling or more supportive parents tend to have more anxiety in their lives. And what are your thoughts on that? You and I have talked about this a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Because you put those anxieties without really realizing it onto your kids. You know what I mean? And they can feel it. They can understand it. And as much as you can protect them from it, you have to be careful, too, that you're not, overly protecting them.
Well, yeah, and one thing that she mentioned this, and you and I talked about parenting styles a little bit a few days ago about, sometimes the very things you think you're protecting them from, you might actually add to their, fear or anxiety of that particular circumstance. And we kind of talked about this, and one of the analogies we talked about is just like a bungee cord, if you will, not to put a leash on your kid. I'm not saying that, but I mean a virtual or an emotional supportiveness, like, I mentioned like maybe a trapeze artist or something like that. How do you learn to work through a particular situation that might
Right.
have some anxiety involved, is to have a tether of some type, an emotional connection with a mentor, with your parents, with teachers, with somebody, but go ahead and take that step to learn about that new experience. Whether it's with school or activities or sports or whatever you're working on, and learn, but knowing that you're not going to fall flat on your face, that somebody's got your back,
Right.
So actually coming at it from like a mentorship parenting style, which you said Andy is very good with that style.
He really is. I mean,
You want to share a little bit about that?
yeah, I mean, so, you know, when I first met Andy and the kids, it was like, okay, well, they shouldn't be doing this, and they should be doing that, and da 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 da. And, because I grew up differently, but I had to realize that, I realized immediately. I stepped back because these are his kids, and he needs to make those decisions for his children. I can be there to help guide. I can be there to support him. If he asks for my opinion, I'm glad to give it, more than willing to give it.
Yeah, we all know.
But I bite my tongue a lot of times, and it's not because of anything bad. It's because he knows his kids. He knows himself. He knows how these kids are shaped. And so he gives them that space to fail. He gives them that space to fail within a perimeter, within boundaries. And he sometimes stands by and it looks like he's not doing anything, but he's watching. And it's really interesting watching him parent, because it's quite lovely.
Oh,
It is. And, watching him give his son and his daughter the room to be themselves and the room to breathe. Yet, he's like, okay, let's look at different ways to approach this situation. And especially when one child gets a little bit more anxious than another. So he gives that particular child room to calm down, room to think, room to breathe, and then goes in and says, okay, so let's talk about this situation. How do you think we could approach it differently? How do you think someone could approach it differently?
I like that.
Or how do you feel? How did it make you feel? It's like CBT, it's like, how did that make you feel? And do you really like that feeling? And if you don't like that feeling, then what are some ways that we can work through this so that you can have a better feeling the next time it comes around?
Oh,
You know?
wow.
Yeah. And he's
like that
he's
style.
very insightful. And so I've actually stepped back quite a bit, because I'm like, he really does know what he's doing.
Yeah.
There's one thing, though, I wanted to also say that I really liked in this too. As they get older, and teens, as they get older, it says, quote, "As they have grown into young men, I have become less a boundary setter, less a guide, and more a presence, a loving, non-judgmental, well, I try, and constant presence." And I think that that's so important. And I think that that's kind of like my role as a step parent, that, listen, I'm not your mom, I'm not your dad, but I'm here for you, and I love you very much. And if life ever gets too tough for you, anxious-wise or depression-wise or whatever-wise, or you just need to talk to someone or you need something, I'm here for you. I'm a presence here for you. And I will welcome you with open arms, always.
Well, you do, and they love you. I can tell they love you, Mo.
Well,
And they share their joys. Sometimes Mo and I just be
sometimes they
hanging
do,
out.
sometimes
and,
they don't.
Well, sometimes you get little text messages where we're hanging out or working on something. And,
That's true.
And it'll be something good that happened at school that day.
Right,
And they'll
right.
reach out to you.
That's true.
Or it might be some question they have or something
Right.
going on. And you have some really cool conversations with those kiddos. You
Yeah.
really do.
Yeah. Or the other day, you know, can you get me some, what kind of paper did she want?
Isometric graph
Isometric graphic paper. I'm like,
paper.
I called about 12 different places talking about anxiety. Like, what? She's not going to be able to get her art project done and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, she
all
figured
worked
it
out.
out. She figured it out.
It all worked out.
Yeah.
Another point that was brought up by the author, Kristen Van Ogtrop, and she mentioned the probable versus possible concept on when we're talking with somebody through their anxious moments. You know, will something, is something going to happen that's making you fearful that's probable or just possible? So that's kind of something there. And she said, as the kids get older, that doesn't work so much. But with younger audience, if you will,
Yes.
children, like, you know, if we go out, so it was, she's talking about her little boy, and they were about to go to an errand, to Costco, what have you. And he looked over, as he did every time they got in the car, looked over his shoulder and looked at the gas gauge and says, Mom, you think we're going to run out of gas? And Kristen, the author, said, well, let's talk about possibilities versus probabilities. It's possible that our car with a quarter tank of gas could run out, but we're only going 2 miles to the store, so it probably won't happen. But she would go ahead and talk with him through the possibilities and probabilities, and I think that's a lesson that I think I'm going to apply. I know it says that it applies to younger people, but I think I could apply that to myself.
I was going to say, I might apply that to myself.
I like that.
I like that too. Because we get into our heads and we're like, okay, well, what if, okay, and
What
that's
if?
where what if?
What
And that's
if?
the anxiety, right?
So that's, yeah, I like that. But anyway, that was one little lesson that was in there that I wanted to approach.
That's also part of CBT, by the way, because it's giving you tools to get through your anxiety.
Yeah.
So it's talking about, okay, you know, I have these, this just happened to me. Well, what's the next chain going to be? And then you think, well, what's the worst probable thing that can happen? And is that really going to happen? Probably not.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So
a good
that's
way to
kind of
look
how
at
you
it.
get through it. Yeah. Okay, so do you want to go into the next section?
Yeah, so the next section was a Wall Street Journal reporter was sharing some insights on how she handles panic attacks at work.
I quit.
No.
Okay, that's not a good solution.
No. So it was interesting because she was talking about this article that she was reporting on and doing this interview, and suddenly she started feeling kind of panicky. And so she said she, with the heart palpitations and the sweaty palms and the breathing, trying to breathe and not going so well and all that. And so then she just kind of said she wrapped up what she was doing as calmly as she could try. And then she went over to a coworker and said, can we go for a walk? And there was some research done, scientific research done on the benefits of going for a walk to calm down, but also not just the walk itself, but where is that walk located?
Right.
So if it's on
the interstate,
interstate,
probably not going to be
like
helpful.
a really busy street is not going to be as productive in reducing your anxiety as walking along a neighborhood or grassy area or something like that. So she did mention that there was some research done in that area, but just the act of just standing up and walking around, and this kind of gets into like some of our fitness watches and
moving your
apparatus,
body,
just
right.
keeping us moving a little bit, especially during this pandemic time.
Right. I love my watch when it buzzes on my arm and it says, and I look down and all it says is breathe. Like I haven't been breathing, for like the last
Just
hour.
a reminder.
Okay, it's time to breathe. I'm like, oh, okay, thanks. But what I do is I actually sit there and I take in a deep breath through my nose and exhale through my mouth.
And you count.
And I do count. Yes, I count. So how does anxiety affect you? I mean, how does your body approach anxiety? Because everybody approaches it differently, right? So I mean, we all get anxious, right?
So how does it manifest itself
In you.
in me?
Yeah.
Well, I also react to deadlines. I mean, as we've talked about before, I am a procrastinator. I tend to put things off, and I call myself, to put it in a nice way, a very deadline-oriented person. But that actually brings about some anxiety when you're having to get that proposal in at the last moment or what have you.
Right.
And I say, oh, well, the best ideas come later for me, but whatever. So but that brings on the anxious moments, the anxiety, and all that. And we talked about this a few episodes back about different manifestations of anxiety, whether it's the heart palpitations or the sweating, the breathing, and one of mine is muscle tension, Mo. That's what I really. I mean, there was a time a few months back when I was working through a certain situation with a colleague, and all of a sudden my neck was so tight. I mean, it's really like, trap muscles, everything, and just tight up there. And I'd be sitting there in the chair, and then I was actually working with this person, and I'd be like kind of rotating my shoulder a little bit, and I'd try to be stretching it out. And this person was like, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I just gotta need to stretch out a little bit." I didn't know what was going on. And it was really unusual because this person was from out of town, and after they left a few days later, it just went away. So all the tension. And I started realizing that anxiety was actually being brought about by the environment and the situation and the conversations and all that were going on. So
It was just wreaking havoc on your body.
it was a physiological response to anxiety. Yeah. It was really, really interesting. So, I mean, you say certain situations or whatever, not to be cliche, a pain in the neck kind of thing. That's what somebody else pointed to me out after that. I thought that's kind of funny, but but now I'm asking you. So the next time I would have a similar situation come up, how do I prepare, so that I don't like get all tense, physically tense again. And I guess as my trainer would say, probably, well, you need to work out more during that situation.
Or roll out or something.
Roll out, stretch. I think stretch more definitely. But yeah, that was just one way. So yeah, I do have anxious moments, and how do I have to figure out how to process those and move through them better going forward.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing, is learning how to not prevent them, because your body is just, if you're prone to anxiety, your body is going to feel that, and and it's okay to accept that, like we've mentioned in the other podcasts, that anxiety can be good.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I totally relate to this article. So the journalist is sitting there, right? And all of a sudden, heart palpitations, her hands become sweaty, and she's just like about to hyperventilate, and she knows that she has to get up and go for a walk. She just knows that she has to do that. And so I have actually been through that situation many, many times. And as I'm getting older, they're less and less, because I now have the tools on how to not stop them, but to make them less severe. So when I have a panic attack, I can feel the pulsation in my neck. I can feel like my heart racing. I can feel my hands become not sweaty, but just clammy. And I'm like, uh-oh. So what I've done, I either go lie down flat on my back and breathe deeply, or if it's really bad, like if the heart palpitations are really, really, really bad, not heart palpitations, what am I trying to think? The adrenaline, the racing heart.
Yeah.
If that's really, really, really bad, then I will literally get up and go for a walk. Because if I just lie there and the palpitations are going, I think about it. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to die. So I go for a walk, and 99.9% of the time, that takes care of it.
And the puppies.
And the puppies, I put them in the crate because they drive me crazy. They do not help my anxiety.
Wait.
FYI.
Wait.
The dogs do.
Last episode, we talked about the power of pets.
No.
And how they
Okay, wait a
reduce-
minute. When they're barking every 2 seconds at squirrels, that's not helpful. They're helpful when they're sleeping. They're helpful when they're cuddly. And they can be very, very little pumpkins. They can be super cuddly, right? But I remember working one day, and I remember having a panic attack, and I had like 30 kids in front of me. Yeah, little kids. Of course, that's probably what put me into the panic attack. But I'm just like, okay. Well, they were banging on the drums, and they were doing xylophones. We were doing stations, and so I would have 5 kids on xylophones, another 5 on the drums, another 5, and they were all making noise at the same time. That about put me over the edge. So I stayed there, of course, because you can't leave the kids.
No.
But I went in the doorway and I opened the door to get some fresh air. And they're like, "Where are you going?" It's, "I'm just going to open the door. I'm right here. You know, da-da-da-da-da." And that was great. You know, that was good. But you know what also I noticed is that if I had too much coffee that morning, that put me way over the edge too. So I've really cut down on the caffeine. You know, I really did. I had to. I didn't cut it out.
No, as we sit here with our
Starbucks. But I think the thing is with this is, you know, how do you handle panic attacks, or how do you handle anxiety and things like that at work? You know, you just go out, like she went out for a walk. Just step away, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I also talked about some of the research on the importance of exercise. And you and I were talking about this yesterday, and we came up when we were talking about grad school and stuff too, and my obsession with playing tennis every chance I got just to release some stress.
Right.
But, you know, that's keeping your psyche right. Like, what is it? Is it singing? Is it some hobby? Is it exercising? Is it yoga? Is it stretching? Is it bike riding? Is it running? Whatever it is.
Whatever your jam is.
Yes.
You have to figure it out.
Whatever your jam. I like it. I like the way you said that. What keeps your psyche right each day to where when anxious moments come about, how you're able to process them could improve. And the one thing they mentioned was sleep too, getting an adequate amount of sleep. And
Right.
I've always, you've heard me, I only require 4 or 5 hours. But, you know, really, I've had numerous people tell me through the years, and my trainers and all that too, that you really should make an effort to drink less coffee, go to bed earlier, and see if you feel. And I have tried that a little bit.
Yeah.
But I have called it a night a little bit earlier and not had the coffee like at 10 p.m., which I've done at times. And as Mo's yawning, I'm telling her this.
There's
and
no
actually
way.
slept more soundly.
If
lately.
I had coffee, so you deal with coffee differently. If I have coffee after 4:00 p.m., I will be up all night long.
So no after dinner coffee.
It has to be decaf.
Really?
Yep. And usually I don't have coffee, you know, after dessert or something.
Wow.
No.
Well, everybody's wired differently.
Everybody's totally different. Like Andy, he can totally have coffee until 11. Well, he shouldn't be, but you know, he could have coffee till like 11 o'clock at night.
And then when you decide time to go to bed, you go to bed.
Yeah.
So it can help you stay up and work or write or whatever you're doing. But then,
Yeah. It's
Interesting.
no good. No bueno for me. No bueno.
That's why they make decaf.
That's right. That's right. And so, like, you know, and you're a night person. I'm a morning person.
Right. That's probably something to do with it,
And that's
too.
something to do with it, too. Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, but, you know, and she says in here, even during easier times in my life, I still have to be careful. And that is very, very true. You know, I have to make sure that I am as healthy as possible so that these panic attacks don't happen. And I've had maybe one in the last, I don't know, 6 months. 2 maybe. No, 1. No, I've had one that I can remember vividly. And I've had like little ones, but nothing I can't handle, you know. But it's a lot. And people, I mean, they can be debilitating. I mean, I think of people who have them all the time. It's got to be exhausting.
Well, and it
Because I'm
interrupts.
exhausted after I have one.
Well,
I'm
yeah.
out for a day. You
And
know?
it just interrupts the flow of activities
Right.
in your life too.
Right. And I mean, when you're anxious and when you are feeling all that tension and everything in your body,
Yeah.
you know, and
I was not
and
as
you carry it
productive.
along.
Yeah, I was not as productive or
Right.
effective as I could be
Right.
in those conversations, in those meetings, and what have you,
Right.
because I was physiologically feeling that tension. And so, really, this is just fascinating in retrospect.
Right.
Think about it. At the time, I
That's
often
my
wonder,
problem. What's going on?
What would I have? Yeah, what would I have done differently or
Yeah.
whatever? I don't know. It totally tensed up, and
Exactly.
so. Yeah, so I'm so glad that we're having these conversations and we're reading through these research articles.
Absolutely.
Because I'm so
Learning a lot.
and receiving a lot of information.
Yeah, me too.
So the next research section of this particular journal that we're looking at right now is entitled "How My Daughter's Anxiety Helped Me Conquer My Own" by an author named Kimberly McCrate. And she talks about how she was working with her child through her child's lifetime on learning how to deal with anxiety from a child's perspective. And it actually helped her realize ways that she could better manage her own anxious moments. Yeah, it was interesting perspective, as we say. And ultimately, her daughter was kind of, having some episodes of mania and all that, and the mom or Kimberly was saying, well, these are amazing personality traits that you have. Just her social adeptness and her crazy wisdom and her total insight and emotionally kind or emotional kindness, all those personality traits that her daughter had, said, well, those are just kind of like in overdrive all the time with her moments of mania. And she said, if you could kind of, I don't want to say rein them in, but learn how to use those in a more positive way, that she said her daughter's the most amazing person. And she could really learn how to use these particular personality assets, traits, to her benefit and to the benefit of others. And so that's what she and her daughter were exploring on learning how to do that. And Kimberly said it actually worked into kind of her own psyche on different issues with anxiety and panic and that kind of thing that she had in her own life, learning how to more, effectively use those traits in those moments, to where she said she tried to perceive her anxiety as a positive force in her life rather than a negative one.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah. And I mean, I took this article and I looked at my mom and myself.
Ah, okay.
I looked at it from the daughter's perspective. And my dad too, and there definitely have been anxious moments in my parents, and I'm like, oh wow, looking back and I'm like, yeah, that's where I kind of learned that from, a little bit. But I know that just in me, and I know that in, the kids that we have and everything, that the anxiety can appear as a manic type behavior. And you can get you've seen me in a manic mode, right? It's like, blah, 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 and it's usually around, my monthly time. Well, let's just be honest, it is. It's like the week before. And I get into this manic mode and I become very, very anxious. And that's actually when when I do experience my panic attacks.
Oh.
And it's pretty steady. It used to be pretty steady until I figured things out. So for me, I think it's a lot of hormonal too. But what I really loved about this part, how my daughter's anxiety helped me conquer my own, what I loved about it is that the mom embraces the craziness, the different parts of her daughter. And she tries to help her channel it in a more effective manner and way of living. And she doesn't dismiss it. She doesn't try to suppress everything with, medications, things like that. Now, I want to first of all say, I do believe that medication is very helpful. So I'm not saying it's not helpful. But what I'm saying for this is that she really takes all of the different parts of her daughter and tries to appreciate them and tries to have her daughter appreciate them in her own self.
Well, to see
and to
these,
love herself.
Right. To see these traits as a gift.
Right.
Like you said, to not be afraid of the anxiety, but as you pointed out, she tries to embrace it.
And
that's just beautiful.
And I love how she says anxiety is really just the sum of all these fabulous parts. Taken away the hell too far.
Yeah.
And that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what it is. That we all have, and this is part of CBT too, that you have different parts to you. You have your child, your inner child. You have your the naysayer. You have your anxious person. You have all these different parts inside your body. And when you think about it, I don't know why we don't all go more crazy. Because we're all of our parts are always talking to each other. Calm down. I don't want to calm down. Just go. And we could all become crazy people, right?
Oh my gosh.
But that's though what I'm talking about is that's what makes people. I was called once colorful. Oh, Maureen, you're so colorful. I'm like, thank you. How do I take that? But knowing where it came from,
I think it's a compliment.
I'm going to take it as a compliment. Absolutely. She's Maria's a wonderful, wonderful lady. But the thing is that I think that people who deal with anxiety are colorful people. And I think that we're just trying to learn how to channel our excitement in life.
Right.
Right? And it might appear to be manic or crazy or, bleh, off the wallpaper, but it's not all a bad thing.
No, and that excitement. So I was talking with a friend of mine, a pastor friend of mine, and we were just like talking about different activities or projects or, launches, ideas, things that I'd worked on in my life. And she looked over at me. She said, because I didn't feel like I'd really finished anything so much. She looked over at me and said, Jenny, you have the gift of apostleship. And I said, really, Judy, no, I don't think so. This is Judy West over at a local church, a crossing here. And she said, I said, I'm no Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. She said, Jenny, I definitely don't mean that. Yeah, right.
Okay. Right. Well, at least we agree on something.
But what she went on to say was that all these people were not afraid to take the leap of faith on a new idea, a new project, a new initiative.
Right.
And so, and that's what people say, oh, Jenny, you get so excited about, whatever you're working on.
Right.
And so, but do I ever finish? And one thing I want everybody to know, this is episode number 25.
Right.
We're working.
Right.
We're still on track. I feel so excited to be here through all this.
I know, right? It's awesome. It's awesome.
But back to the point is that, we colorful, excited, just kind of manic about everything going on in life and all that. And that shows through.
Right.
And it can be a positive.
And it can be creative.
It can be creative. It can be a positive. So
and it can be a beautiful rainbow and unicorns. No,
yes. I take her comment as a compliment.
Right.
But she also knows how to make me think.
Right.
Like, okay, so if you're okay to walk through that door, do you need to walk through every doorway that seems to be open on your path of life? No.
Right.
And so you need to figure out, however you work through your thought process or your decision-making tree, what influence, who the influencers are in your life, how to figure out which leaps to take, if you will. And I definitely see this podcast series with us as a most positive, exciting leap that we've embarked upon.
I agree. I agree with that.
It's really, good. And I look forward to many, many more of our episodes.
Many, many more. The other thing that I like about this, that what she said too, is that she said, anxiety is an onerous, exasperating life suck.
Wait, say that again.
Anxiety is an onerous, exasperating life suck. It's at the bottom
Wow.
of 90.
Yeah.
But it really is. And
Yeah.
it is, but she goes on to say, but here's the thing, much of what makes my daughter so special, her emotional sensitivity and acute empathy, predisposes her to anxiety. And I think it's because we're so in tuned and we do feel like I can tell you so much about just me and my body. You know, I mean, I do.
Yeah,
Tell
you
you
did.
too much, maybe.
You did
But
tell us a lot. It's okay.
it's okay. But with that comes an energy, and which I think is important. You know,
Yeah.
and I think to deny that energy is not good.
Well, that's true. And you and I have talked about this before about the edge. You know,
Right,
whether you're
right.
performing, speaking, teaching, what have you.
Right.
Would you say having that edge as you're about to go into whatever activity or experience is kind of controlled mania in a
Right.
way? So sometimes people ask me before I'm speaking or whatever, oh, are you nervous? And my comment is, well, I'd say my butterflies are flying in formation right now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there's
Right.
kind of an
And that's
edge
good.
there. There's an excitement.
You
There's
need
an
that
edge.
Yeah, you need that edge. And you know, and that's why sometimes people don't want to go on medication, because that medication, like Prozac or whatever it is, it takes that edge off. It takes that little edge away,
Yeah.
not completely, but a little bit, so that you don't panic and you don't become anxious. You know, so
So if your
you kinda have to
butterflies
be
are not in
careful.
formation, what have
Right.
you, that you might
Right.
have too much anxiety, and that could actually curb that a bit.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of a
Interesting.
catch-22. So then that's why people don't like to be on medication, because they quote unquote don't feel like themselves. But that's the whole point.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't want to be too crazy and too manic, you know. So, and sometimes you have to tell your mind to slow down a little bit so you can catch up.
Well, and that's it. Kind of the talking yourself through this, like you said a few moments ago, with your classroom and the children and their instruments and all that. Just figuring out, like you said, the toolkit. You know, the tools that we're accumulating to
Right.
learn how to work through these particular anxious situations.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I mean, I really liked this. I really liked this. You know,
What?
in the end, there was one tactic that had the most lasting effect, helping my daughter see her anxiety as one crooked offshoot of her otherwise awesome personality.
I like that.
Yeah, I like that. A crooked offshoot. It's still part of you.
It is. Yeah, it is.
And it's just like many things in life, you just have to learn how to work around it and learn how to work with it.
Well,
Yeah, I don't like work around it. Work with it.
work with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we all have idiosyncrasies and things in our personalities and all that. I mean, we all have things we have to work through and work with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited that Kimberly was willing to share
Share
this
that
story.
story. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. It's a
Yeah.
great story. It's a wonderful story. So, yeah. So the very last section of this is My Struggles with Anxiety by Alyssa Milano. And she had some things happen to her through pregnancy, through giving birth, and things like that. And through this, she developed, severe anxiety. And anxiety can be chronic or it can be situational. And so in this particular example, it was a situational anxiety that happened, and then now it's just continued to be chronic. It kind of set her off, I think, for life, you know. because now she's aware of it. But she says that, with the help of a psychiatrist and a therapist, she was able to be brave and able to face her illness and the value to seek help and the strength to recover. And she says that I am continuing to do all three and most likely will for the rest of my life. And she finds comfort in this type of recovery, right? Mm-hmm. And so we all have our own different recoveries that we have, and I think it's important that we all find our own path to deal with our own journey, because we everyone who deals with anxiety or panic attacks or whatever, they all have their own journey that they have to figure out. Mm-hmm. There's not one size fits all.
Oh, that's true. There's no cookie cutter approach.
No.
Everybody's path is different.
But I think the most important thing is that embrace it. Don't be afraid of it. Mm-hmm. And don't be ashamed of it.
Right.
It's something that is real, and there are millions of Americans that deal and around the world that deal with it every day of their lives.
Mm-hmm. And that Alyssa was very open in sharing her story.
Yeah, that's
with
great.
Us.
That's great.
It was really insightful.
And I mean, obviously, it's not a small thing, because there are 93, 94, 95. There are 96 pages about the age of anxiety.
Mm-hmm. In this particular research.
In this particular section.
Journal, yeah.
Yeah. Or journal, the whole thing.
Well, and the very last...
Oh, this is my favorite. Hey, where is mine, by the way? I asked you for it.
Oh, I need to run upstairs and get that.
No, don't worry about it. Go ahead.
So, the very last page...
This is my favorite page of the whole book.
Scientific research journal put together by the experts at Time magazine and all of their collaborations with universities and here and around the world. So many insights that we've been able to glean and to share and to talk about through all these pages. The very last page is entitled Sweet Relief. And it said, eating a 1-ounce piece of dark chocolate can help alleviate symptoms of anxiety. What do you think about that one?
Well, I think that 1-ounce piece of dark chocolate that I ate about 17 times the other day worked really well.
That's not exactly what
it
they're
means?
saying, but...
I was feeling really, really, really happy.
I'm sure you were. So it says... According to the researchers, eating a 1-ounce piece of dark chocolate can help alleviate symptoms of anxiety. And actually, eating dark chocolate helps produce serotonin, which is the brain's happy chemical. And
oh yeah.
And increased production of it can drastically improve overall mood. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that?
So it's better than having a glass of wine, or it's better than having a piece of cake.
Right. Right.
You have to choose your battles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even with the dark chocolate, there's
benefits.
So many varieties.
Yeah. Right.
That you can find in different stores and different places to order and all that. And so, and you just decide what variety you like. What glucose or sugar content you want in. Do you like sweet, semi-sweet, or the really dark chocolate that's, mostly cacao and very little sugar? So moving forward on this journey with the Time researchers and their journals, we are going to be moving into the science of stress. And next time, we'll really jump into what it means to define stress. How do we define it in our own lives? How are these researchers defining it? And we'll even get into that phrase that Mo actually mentioned in this particular podcast about the fight or flight reaction.
Yeah, that's going to be cool.
So it's going to be insightful to what the scientists and researchers and doctors have to say about those emotions. So we look forward to connecting with all you guys. Again, we'd love to hear your comments and insights on what we're doing here at BMI Redefined. And we'd like to learn more about what you would like to hear about as far as topics, guests along the way. And we just look forward to getting together again on BMI Redefined with Jen and
Mo!
Yay!
Yay!
All right. See you next
See you
time,
guys later. Thanks a
Bye.
lot.